Hello, beautiful beings. Welcome to our first episode. We are here, and we thought it would be so divine and make so much sense for us to just start off by doing an episode to share mine and Dani's personal stories so that you can all start to understand, like, who are we and how did we come to create this space? And I know, like, right now, Dani and I both are on this journey of really living our own personal experiences of like heaven on earth. And I also know that it hasn't always been this way for either of us. And most of the things that we're going to share in this space, like once upon a time, I didn't believe in any of it. And once upon a time, I didn't even know it existed. And a huge reason why we have created this podcast and created this space to share our voices is so that we can share our minds, our minds and like our insights and our magic with you all. And there's like a little hope within me that it unlocks something deep within you as you come on this journey with us. And so my story, or a glimmer of my story that we're going to share today, because as we all do, our stories are huge and eventful when we look at our lives. But for me, I was born in Tauranga, New Zealand, and I was blessed to be born into a family that gave me an absolutely amazing childhood and an upbringing that was filled with so much joy. Like so much joy. I have three siblings and they're all girls, so I have three sisters, and I can remember spending so much time like playing outside and being active outside throughout my childhood. And because I had so many siblings, like we could play like almost any game because you could go like 2 versus 2, or like mum and dad would play and there'd be six of us, and like there was always someone to play with and there was always something to do. And I can remember like we would build obstacle courses, we would like dig out the garden and make like mountain bike tracks, or we would have water fights. My dad taught me how to like skateboard, how to unicycle, how to ride a bike, how to do like all of these outdoor activities. And it was so much fun. Like it was so much fun. And my parents really, they just put so much time into us playing outside. And it's something that as I've gotten older, I've realized how unique that is. And I've also realized like being out in nature is such a big part of not only my body's knowing, but like my whole childhood. And I'm so grateful that my parents allowed me to spend so much time outside, because now like the safety and the connection I feel to Mother Earth is not only a deep knowing through my body, but also through my childhood. And it's quite funny because I often say, like, I'll say to Dani or I'll say to like my partner, like, oh my gosh, like I feel more at home, like out in the bush or like lying on the grass or like swimming in nature than I do in like the structural building that we are taught is our home. And I often will have like this soft topic, but like often I'll have these visions of like past lives where like I lived in nature and like we lived around fire pits and like we lived in community, and there's this part of me that desires that deep connection and that ability to live in nature, and that's something that I'm really wanting to foster in this lifetime. And yeah, it's like this knowing of like I've done it before and I want to do it again. And so when I finished school around like the age of 17, 18, I chose to go to university. And at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to study. And all I really knew was like I loved sport. Like I played sport throughout all my childhood. I played sport in school, and I was like, okay, so it makes sense. Like I'll become a physio. And so I moved to a really big city that was about 3 hours from where my parents lived. So I moved out of home. I left all my friends, And I was like, okay, like I'm going to become a physio. And when I moved out, it was the biggest culture shock I've ever had. I had just gone from being at school from like 8:30 till 3:30 and like my mum cooking my food, doing my washing, like my parents like taking care of me. And all of a sudden I was at university, which I knew nothing about. And we only had like 1 to 2 hours of classes or like lectures a day. And I was like, what the actual fuck do I do all day? I had no friends. And the hall that I was living in, it was like a hostel. They didn't have any events or like any opportunities to really meet anyone. And everyone seemed to like hang out in their rooms. And it was like they already knew each other or they already like lived in areas or around people that they knew and could go and connect with. And I didn't at the time like have the confidence or the courage to like knock on their door and be like, hey, can I hang out with you? Which like a part of me really wanted to do, but she was so scared. And so I spent so much time like alone. And there was times where like I did go out occasionally and like try and make friends, but I always felt like an outsider. And I like, you know, when you're like standing there and everyone around you is having so much fun and inside your body, you're like, I don't want to be here. I don't belong here. And I had just gone from like an environment where like I was thriving in sport. I was around my friends all the time. We were like drinking, there was boys, it was so much fun to like all of a sudden like being stripped of all of that. And like the happy, like carefree, childlike Simone had gone. Right? I felt like I had to become an adult overnight and I felt so deeply alone and scared and unsure and almost like a failure. I was like, here I am like becoming a physio, but this degree that put me in a box is like stripping me of everything that brought me happiness. And how I began to cope during this time and with like the heaviness of these emotions that I was experiencing was through food. Right? I started to emotionally eat. And I can remember waking up some days and like having nothing to do and having no classes on and like not really needing to study and not knowing where to go because I didn't know where anything was in the city. That I would just wake up and I'll be like, okay, I'll go to the supermarket and I'll buy like all my favorite food and I'll just come home and I'll binge eat it all. And in those moments where I was eating, it was like that was the only glimmer of like happiness and pleasure I felt was when I was eating. But then when I stopped eating, then came like the guilt, the shame, the self-hate. And it was so hard because on the outside, like everyone that knew me was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. You're becoming a physio. It makes so much sense. You played sport for like the last 10 years. And on the inside, I was like, this can't be it. This is not it. But when everyone at that age is telling you, you should be this, you should be this, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're going to be amazing physio, and you're hating it and you're losing yourself through it, you feel like such a failure. Like I was really dying inside and I was losing like who I was and I was losing so many parts of myself. Like I was losing my soul's purpose and like my sense of humor, my playfulness, my freedom, my love and joyful life. It all started to slowly die. And I started to become really depressed. Like really depressed. And I had no idea that I was becoming depressed at this time. I had no idea what depression was. It wasn't emotions and depression and things like that weren't ever something that I was taught. And I didn't even know like what emotional eating was or binge eating was. And like at this time, I was just kind of like, what the actual F is wrong with me? Like I thought I was broken. And I kept being like, I just wish I could go back to who I was before I moved away. I just wish I could like forget this. I wish I could go back. But I couldn't. I couldn't go back. And so eventually I dropped out of university. I was like, I can't stay here. I can't do this. It's like killing me. And I decided to move back in with my parents, which seemed like a really good idea at the time. And you're like, this will fix it. I'll just go back, like I'll change location. I'll just move. But you forget that when you move, you don't change. And I actually felt like more of a failure moving back home. And I went into an even darker place. And some days I could hardly get out of bed. And I would cry like all the time. And I felt like I had no purpose. I had no direction. And I was gaining like all of this weight from overeating. And then I started to punish my body through exercise. And I was finding myself asking, like, why am I here? Like, what is the point of being here? And I never wanted to kill myself physically, but like, I didn't want to be here anymore. And I had no idea like what was wrong with me, and I wouldn't open up to anyone. Right? Having an upbringing where like I wasn't taught about emotions, I didn't even know how to explain what the fuck was going on. Right? And I struggled in silence. And I felt so much shame for how I was behaving and who I was becoming. And slowly I just started to push everyone that loves me away. And this only darkened my darkness. And it only reinforced the belief that I already had that I'm not lovable as I am. And I started to like through the emotional eating and then countered like paired with the physical activity and like the over exercising, the only place outside of food where I actually felt happy or a glimmer of happiness was in the gym, was when I was moving. And so I decided that I wanted to become a personal trainer and like learn more about food. And initially, this deeply fulfilled me until it didn't. And I started to realize like me being a personal trainer was actually allowing me to normalize and keep so many of my behaviors that were contributing to me having a really unhealthy relationship with my body and like not being able to unlock the magic in my body. The behaviors that were normalized as a personal trainer were keeping me in a box. And this is things like tracking my food, right? Taking pictures of my physical body, determining my worth based on if I ate a good food, whatever that is, or a bad food, whatever that is. I always weighing myself. During training programs, no matter what, there was no look of like, or like analyzing of, am I enjoying this? Does this feel good? It was all about, what will this make me look like? How will this change my body? And there was a point when I was a personal trainer that I decided that like I don't know how to get out of this hole I'm in this time. And so I decided to get a mentor and like dive deep into my healing and start to really uncover some of my wounds. And it literally changed the trajectory of my life forever. And I really started to realize like I had been playing a role and trying to fit into society and be accepted my majority of my life. And in doing that, I had been rejecting so much of who I was. And I started to really unlearn a lot of the character I had been playing. And I started to reclaim my power and be like, who is Simone? Who is she without the job, without her partner, without the things she owns, without the things she's achieved? Who am I? What is my power? And I started to realize like my magic and my wholeness lies between my thighs And that is the only calling and the only purpose that I aspire to connect with and follow in this lifetime.
Fuck yes. Mic drop.
Yeah, I just got to a point where I was like, I'm done with, and this is going to sound super backwards, I'm done with goal setting. I'm done with saying I need to attain XYZ. I want to become XYZ. And I decided whatever my deep belly truth was, I'm going to honor her and follow her. Right. And I stopped suppressing everything with like food and alcohol and scrolling and shopping. And I started to feel. And it was painful. It was so painful, but so beautiful. And I realize now that like the food and the obsession with my body and like the insecurities that I felt that consumed me for so long were just a huge distraction that society and like the patriarchy wanted me to focus on in order to ensure I never fucking felt the magic within me. Because for as long as you focus on those things, you will never feel what's within you. You're always focusing on the external stuff. And I really started like to honor myself, and I started to disappoint people. I started to let people go because my body said to let them go. And I started to love myself. Even the most like wild and crazy and passionate and aggressive and dark parts of me. I see them and I hold them and I honor them and I allow them to be there. And I quit what was a very masculine job of being a personal trainer, and I started to slow down and live a life in deep connection with Mother Earth and my womb and my body. And what this has all led me to doing is like living a life in my true power. And it's a life's work. It's a mission. It's a calling. It's like, it's a never ending deliciousness of the human experience. And I'm sure so many women that are listening to this have felt this calling of like, this can't be it. There has to be more here. Or this like desire for more, or like this knowing that there is something within you, but you can't put your finger on it. Because I felt that and Dani felt that. And so I'm here today on this podcast devoted to being and becoming a witch, which is a woman in her power and a woman healing. Dani's dancing. Yeah. And honestly, if the phrase witch scares you, just know that you have been taught to be scared of your power. And I was once scared of mine too. But together we can rise, and you don't have to do it alone. And that's just a glimmer of what got me to creating this space and really using my voice. Using my voice because I fucking know my power. And I'm ready to share it all.
You're a badass boss bitch.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much for sharing your vulnerable story. You know, I can relate on so many levels. I had chills on so many times.
Well, that's really beautiful.
You know, I was having a conversation with this lady today, and I'd met her through homeschooling my son, which I'll talk about on another episode, with how I got about to being able to have the courage to homeschool my last child, my little baby, with the conscious parenting that I do now, right? But I was having this conversation with this lady about what I do in my healing and medicine woman space, and we were talking about cleansing, and the word witch came up, and she was like, "Oh, And I started talking to her about connecting back to her body, her heart, and her womb space, because she didn't know what she wanted to do in terms of work right now, being a single mom. And she was like, the clairvoyant said this, and then another clairvoyant said that. I was like, honey, you need to come back home. You need to come back and center yourself and, learn your magic. And she was like, oh, really intrigued, right?
Mm.
And we were talking about how back in the day, women, they couldn't suppress women on their own, right? They found out that killing everyone, killing all the women for journaling or, sitting out in nature, grounding themselves, it actually wasn't working because they need women to have babies, right, to repopulate. So what they started to do instead is patriarchy started to turn women against each other, but most importantly, most beneficial, against themselves,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
right? They start hating themselves so much that they start to diminish and belittle themselves continuously, so they don't get too powerful and use their voice.
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Mm,
I feel that and I experience that.
mm.
It works. It really works.
Well, it does, because at the very beginning of this podcast, right, we sat here for maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes looking at each other and going, right, we're ready, we're doing this, we're sharing our voice. It's not about sharing our story, it's about sharing our voices. And we both had this deep inner knowing that we were going to do this in a past life. And we were
Mm-hmm.
in this lifetime, in a lifetime at some point, and we will probably do it again, right? But there was an ache in my heart, and there was a heaviness around your eyes, Mon.
Yeah.
It was like our bodies just went, oh, we're doing that thing.
Mm-hmm. It's so powerful. And to note that so often we think what we are experiencing in our bodies is based on what we've been through in this lifetime. And as we get into on another podcast, like in our friendship, most of the things we experience are not from this lifetime,
Yeah,
but from many lifetimes ago.
yeah.
And they show up here as an opportunity for us to gain insight and guidance and feel them and move through them and heal them and really step into and awaken all that we are. But if you're at war with yourself, none of that is available to you.
Yeah, it's deep. It's deep, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would really love to share my story. I've shared my story in many different places before. And I feel like every time I share my story, it's slightly a little bit different. And it's always a little bit different because, A, it depends the audience that I'm sharing it to and what's most aligned at that time. Because my childhood was very, very different to yours, sister. In this lifetime, it was. And I know why now. And it's because with the work that I do, with being a medicine woman and not only healing energetics and teaching spirituality and healing relationships with body and self and all of that kind of amazing, beautiful stuff that I do and that we do in our separate spaces and a space together soon. Oops. But a part of what I do in the medicine woman space is with the shamanic journeys is taking people into their darkness, deep into their trauma to be able to actually fucking heal from it.
Mm-hmm. You do. Mm-hmm.
Because you can't heal what you suppress. You can do as many Reiki sessions as you like. You can do as much personal development and mindset work as you like. But unless you actually go into that darkness and into that shadow, it won't transform because you're running away from it, which is what I did for 33 years.
Mm. Yeah.
When I was a little girl, I too lived in the garden. Holy moly, I was so connected. Like, I grew up as an only child, and my mother has severe brain damage, right? So, technically, I shouldn't have grown up with her. And I was taken away from her for a few years as a little baby, and then given back to her because she fought for me, which was beautiful. But because things weren't really always very safe inside and at home, I lived in the gardens. So I would always like mix magic potions and create spells and pretend I was like this goddess witch. And what's really interesting is that I was so connected deeply to my spirituality because of the amount of time that I spent in nature, right? Because we are nature. I was so grounded. I never wore shoes. I always wore whatever I wanted. But I used to like swim in the cosmos of a night time in my lucid dreams. And for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's like traveling into a different dimension before the dream state, in a lucid dream state. So I used to have these continuous dreams of like being in a black void and seeing like all of these like geometric shapes and like feeling of consistent falling. And it was so cool. Like, it was amazing. And I remember I told my mum once, and I was like, Mum, I keep having this reoccurring dream, and I'm like swimming, and I'm like, can see all this stuff. And I can't remember the exact words she said, but it was something along the lines of, that didn't happen. You've got a great imagination. You must be making that up. So I interpreted that as a way of, it's not true, it's not actually happening. So it very slowly started to repress that continuous level of floating in the cosmos, right? And out of body experiences. But then what actually started to happen was um, my mum, due to the severity of her brain damage, started to leave me in really unsafe situations. So I was sexually assaulted at the age of 5, and that happened for months. And I accidentally spoke about it um, to my mum's boyfriend at the time, who used to beat her up, and it was quite a traumatic time. And I accidentally spoke up about it, and I ended up going through the court system. And you see, my generation, I'm 35 now. My generation was the last generation that they would have children in the courtroom with perpetrators, right? Now they do everything by CCTV. So, I feel truly blessed that I was able to be a stand for all the children today. Um,
Mm.
because it was such a traumatic event, consistently being in that room and having someone across the room telling me to shush, in front of the judge and everyone else. And, my mum screaming and crying because he only got 2 years, and she was screaming out and saying it's not fair. And I had no fucking idea what was going on. I didn't even know that it was wrong. Like, I was just doing what the old man told me to do all the time. And that led to a childhood of continuous things, trauma after trauma. There was darkness after darkness. It's interesting when I sit here and I think about what to share, because there's a lot there, and there's um, a lot of scarcity there. But when I was 14, when I was 14, I ran away from home because home wasn't safe. It wasn't safe. I'd been sexually assaulted numerous times. I'd, seen my mum almost die in many cases because of the partners that she was with. And my mum, her brain damage gets worse as she gets older because it's her prefrontal cortex that was damaged, right? So as she gets older, the worse that it got. So at 14, I decided enough was enough. And when I was a little girl, I had all of this free spirit, all this free time. I lived outside consistently. And when I got to a teenager, my mum kept me indoors and I wasn't allowed to even open my window. So I started to rebel and sneak out and do all those things. So me moving away from home was a really beautiful opportunity for me. I had that sense of freedom that I felt trapped and I didn't have. And, kind of like how I felt when I was a little girl, I had this freedom and I started developing all these friendships and boys really liked me. And, I started drinking and I had like all of this fun and a lot of interesting moments, a lot more trauma, but like overall it was like me just suppressing my childhood, running away from it, and living a little bit more what I thought was love and acceptance, and gaining all of these things from other people and on the outside of me. And then things went for a turn for the worst. So when I was around about 25 or 26, I was in a relationship, and it was a domestic violence relationship. And it got so bad that one night I tried to end my life. And I got so drunk. I called a friend over so she could look after my 3 babies while I went and killed myself. And she didn't know that that was going to happen, right? And I reached out to him, my ex, for help. And I said, this is how I'm feeling. I feel so broken. And his message back was, just do it. Everyone would be better off. So that sent me spiraling. While I was already drunk, I drank like 3 bottles of wine. I used to drink a lot because it would suppress all of the trauma that I'd had. And it sent me into a really, really dark place. And I ended up in a mental institution from that night for 2 days. And when I was in this mental institution, I had the very first spiritual awakening that I've ever had. And I just remember hearing and seeing my highest self through a dream. What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? You need to get out. You need to get out of this town and you need to start fresh. And over the course of those 48 hours, I built a plan of attack to leave my ex and take my 3 babies, even though I had all of these like limiting beliefs. Like I'm a single mom of 3 kids. No one's going to want me. How am I going to do this on my own with one income? I barely got any financial assistance with my other 2 children's father. Things were really, really tough. And, I left that relationship. I built the courage to leave that relationship. And I left that relationship with about $15,000 worth of debt. Most of it wasn't mine. And so it took years and years to build on that. But the beautiful thing was as I got away from it, and it was amazing. Life started to look really good. I stopped drinking. I immersed myself in the fitness industry, became a bodybuilder. I was like training 5-6 days a week, and I was enjoying eating healthy food and tracking my food and doing all of the things and ticking all of the boxes. I became a PT. But I started to notice that even with this amazing physique, that I had no confidence. I couldn't walk in the gym without flexing and checking myself out and taking random photos and posting them continuously just to get that validation. There was like this piece missing. It's like I wanted the love and acceptance that I truly deserved, but I was gaining it from everyone else, from the outside. And what happened is I got to a point where I developed an eating disorder, and I pulled out of a show of a comp 2 weeks before the comp was. And when I did this, I started to delve into personal development work because I knew that all of the years leading up to seeing different psychologists and psychiatrists and all of these different counselors and different modalities that I'd worked, none of it fucking worked. Right? I mean, it was like some parts of it worked. Talking about my experiences and my traumas was beautiful, but it was just talk therapy. Here I was, 34 years old, and I was had an eating disorder, and I was, still attracting these surface level relationships and friendships, and I was like happy but not actually happy. And I just remembered from when I was a little girl, and I was so interconnected and happy with everything that I was. I was so carefree, and I was loud and boisterous, and I'd have so much fun. I thought to myself, surely that has to be available as an adult, right? Even after all of this darkness and all of this trauma, surely that's available. So I delved into the personal development world, and I got a rude shock. All of this unhealed trauma surfaced to the very top. However, I was able to then look at it from another perspective and actually start to heal these parts of me, understand my limiting beliefs, understand my values and what they actually were, understand why I used sex and recreational drugs at the time and alcohol to avoid feeling what I'd felt for all of those years. I learned that holding judgment to those parts of me, the parent that I was as a single mum, the person that I used to be that used to party all the time, that holding judgment to those parts of me was keeping me stuck. But I was unable to move through them because I thought that talk therapy was the go, right? It was the bee's knees. That was it. I've done counseling. I've healed my trauma. Well, no, I hadn't, because I hadn't actually gone into that darkness. And the thing is when I'd gotten to a point where I was able to accept all of these parts of me, the person that I had to become in order to make it through, all of these untouched bits of shame that I'd felt and guilt that I'd felt from all of these events that had happened to me, the judgment that I had towards my mother, the judgment that I had towards my father for not being there, the hatred that I had to let it go. I had to work through that. So then I could then step into this soul aligned woman, this confident woman that looks in the fucking mirror every single day, whether I'm at the gym or whether I'm at home or whether I'm on this screen right now. I look at myself, I smile, and I go, fuck, I love you. Like, I
Mm.
really, really love you. Like, I feel that connection to my heart, to my body, to my womb space, my sex, which was really challenging for me considering the sexual assault, right? It was like, I don't want to get too close into my sexuality. I don't want to be too sexy, because the women, they judge me for wearing that or looking like that, or they all get jealous if I go anywhere near their boyfriends. No, that's just unhealed bullshit, sister.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Stuff that I too was living with. I used to get triggered as fuck When some woman would walk in the room confident, not cocky, confident, and she would just be elegant. And I'd be like, I hate you because I want to be like you. I want that confidence. I want that freedom. I want that love. I want that soul acceptance. I want to remember who the fuck I am. But it took really looking at my life, where I was, to really start to heal all of these parts of me, mentally, physically, and spiritually, so I could actually unlock my gifts to be the magic that I am today, to have the meditations that I have today, to have the soul aligned friendships that I have today that I didn't fucking think were possible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was so much to overcome. I had to overcome fear, which was the number one thing. Fear of being seen, fear of being too much, the fear of the darkness. But what would actually happen if I loved myself? How would that affect my kids? Well, when I really started to demask and unveil, my mentor said to me, when you heal yourself, you heal those around you. And I believed it, but I didn't really believe it. Right. I was like, how is this making any sense? I'm like a demon right now. I have all this trauma that's coming up and I'm like a monster, but it's true. The relationship that I have with my children, my 15-year-old daughter, the things that she says and the nervous system regulation and connection that she has with her body is like, whoa, this work is powerful, right? And I see it with my oldest boy. I see it with my youngest boy. I'm at a position now where it was just a couple of mornings ago that I was having a stressful morning, right? I'm human. I'm fucking human. I was like feeling stressed. It was the day before the autumn equinox, so my mind, like everything was just like energetically and spiritually, woo, going crazy for me. And I was feeling stressed. And my 10-year-old says to me, "Mom, I don't like your energy. Can we sit down and have a breath work session? Because I would like a cuddle and I would like to feel love. This is not love."
Oh my goodness.
And that stopped me in my tracks. And I went, let's sit down and do a little breath work session, son.
Mm.
Brought myself back into my body. And then I was able to go about the rest of my morning, right? Because what I was taught was just go, 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 and just be busy. What's the next best successful thing that you can do? Oh, I'm a single parent. I've got to do all the things. Like kids have to have all of the things, right? And it's like, no, just like you, Mon, once I'd slowed down, things went faster for me in a more grounded way. And when I remember sitting in my sexual assault counselor's office when I was going through a court case for, again, another sexual assault that happened, but I was an adult this time. And I wanted my victory to say my victim's impact statement. And with my mindset that I had even back then, she said to me, she's like, Dani, you are a force to be reckoned with. You should write a book. Share your story. And I said to her, yeah, I'll share my story. I'll write a book one day. It's what I intend to do. But the power of sharing story, which I've learned over the past few years, is imperative, because whether you can relate to my story in many of the things that I've shared, or whether you can relate to a feeling that I've felt, lack of confidence, self love, the hatred, the judgment, the shame, whatever that may be, that's the piece there. And this is why sharing story is so important,
Yeah. And
right?
I think also your story, like, thank you so much for sharing that. And a big piece that was coming up as you're sharing is like, it's such a powerful reminder that not everything that happens to you is like you deserved that or like it's happening for you. It's not always that. Baby Danny didn't deserve that. But you do have the power and the control and the responsibility to heal that and move through that. And I think you really give hope and trust to so many women that they can move through that darkness that you were once in.
Mm,
That your journey is so beautiful,
mm,
so beautiful. But I can imagine a lot of women that have similar stories are unable to see the beauty in it because they feel like they're still in it. They're still in that darkness. And I really hope that through them hearing your story, they know there's a way out.
mm. Every story is unique.
Mhm.
Every single one of our stories are unique. They're our codes for this life.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much power in sharing. And I can remember for most of my life, I kept everything in. And it wasn't until I started to share it and let it go that it fucking let go.
Mm,
But for as long as I was silent, I was holding on without knowing I was holding on to everything I wanted to let go of.
mm.
And so, although we also shared our stories today, I hope to inspire whoever's listening to maybe share a little bit of theirs that they're holding on to and that they want to let go of.
Yeah. Even if that's not showing up on a podcast or showing up on Instagram, or even if that is showing up to yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, that's big.
Yeah, sharing a story with yourself, with the person staring back at you in the mirror.
Hmm.
Happened and this hurt me.
Yeah.
I want to witness that.
I can remember a beautiful thing I did at the beginning of my journey was I wrote down my story in my journal and I sobbed and I read it and I felt it and I had never written down everything I had been through and seen it and really seen it. And it was such a powerful moment that I had so much resistance to do, but on the other side of that, I felt so liberated. And to be like, yeah, that fucking happened to me, and I'm gonna own it. I'm gonna say it. I'm just gonna start to see it.
You know what's really coming up for me now is that a lot of people have a lot of judgment in diminishing their story and saying this wasn't that bad, so I shouldn't need to feel that way about this one thing, right? Whether that be the child sitting across from you in the room at school calling you fat, and then now here you are 20 years later consistently comparing your body to other women and binge and restrict and punishing yourself through the gym, but by not actually sitting and recognizing that that fucking hurt and that that's okay, that that really hurt you, it's just going to continue going.
Hmm. Yeah, that's such a big piece because it's like, I remember I was like, okay, well, I haven't been sexually assaulted. I haven't been like bullied. Like, no one's physically abused me. I was like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And a part of me used to be like, oh my gosh, like, I'm so pathetic. I haven't been through anything that bad, right? Because I thought that trauma was these massive events. And it wasn't until I looked at my childhood and all the little traumas and all the little moments where I needed love and I needed connection and I was abandoned that those compiled. And those took me into so much darkness. But it was so profound for baby Simone. But as an adult, when I grew older, I thought that it needed to be bigger traumas.
Mm,
It didn't.
mm, yeah,
Mm.
I really feel that, sister. And something that I'm being called to share right now is that I shared all the really big pieces of my life through counseling, through psychology, but there were a lot of little things that are not little things.
Mm-hmm.
I look on the outside of things, but whether they be big things, but they weren't as big as that one event that happened that I just suppressed and didn't look at. And it's not that you need to sit and look at everything of your life, but it's that you need to witness it and allow yourself just to feel and go, yeah, actually, that was really shit. And this made me feel that, and just witness that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful reminder. And I
Mm,
think it would even be powerful in the future to do an episode on this, on like what is trauma and like just share some of ours
mhm,
so that the listeners can really start to understand like maybe that wasn't normal.
mm.
Maybe I'm okay to feel that and move through that. Mm. But I trust that our stories have allowed you to feel more connected with us and more excited for the journey that we're going to embark on and what we're going to bring to light within you through bringing what's alive within us. And we
Mm.
thank you so much for tuning in. We really, really thank you.
Thank you so much, beautiful souls. We love you.
Bye.